Good morning, everybody. You know what today is. It's Keep It Simple Saturday, and my name is Stacy Renee. I'm a transformational mindset shift coach. So today I wanted to talk about taking things personally. I recommended a few books last night in the session, the meeting I had last night with someone. And I want to recommend those to y'all because as the weather is starting to get cooler, as you can see, I'm out here on the patio again because the mosquitoes aren't as bad. The rain has let up a little bit. I think we may get rain today, though. Let me show you this. See? You go up, you see the sky. There's clouds. It's so wonderful out here this morning. See, there's some blue over there, and there's a star still yet up in there. You probably can't see the star. Anyway, I was out here earlier this morning looking at the stars. So in talking about and recommending these books, as the weather is getting cooler, we can read more and do things that are good for our mind. We've exercised our bodies outside. Hopefully you got a walking pad or something like that. Listening to books, reading books, and the books that I recommended yesterday were Don Miguel Ruiz's. They were really popular about 20 years ago, and they kind of fall within the same realm of let them. Because I want to talk to you today about the first agreement, and that's not taking things personally. There's a lot of division right now because people are taking things personally. Because a lot of people just want to be validated, and we can't validate everybody, but we don't have to get upset ourselves because somebody else wants validation. We just scroll, okay? So we were talking about that last night in the meeting and discussing these things, and so one book was The Four Agreements, and I looked for that this morning to go over not taking things personally, and we'll touch on that more. But also, the same author wrote this one, The Mastery of Love. And for me, when I was single and I was dating and I didn't understand how things were going and not taking things personal, and The Mastery of Love can fall together. So I wanted to relate those two things. And another book that I recommended is if you are single or if you are struggling in relationships is called In the Meantime with Iyanla Vanzant. And what that book it talks about is the different levels and layers that we grow ourselves and grow relationship, how we think of ourselves starting in the basement and taking that inventory, because this is what not taking things personally is about, is that when we're wounded children, I'm just going to read a little bit out of this book, but I just want you to practice this week when you start to take another person's behavior personally, just realize that's the way that they behave. And knowing that we are all wounded souls, that we've all had some kind of wound, whether it was in childhood, whether it was in adulthood, that has trained our central nervous system to have expectations. And so when we get to heal from those expectations and not look for evidence for more pain, then we can have the freedom. And I want you all to have freedom because that's what I try to promote here on all the platforms that I work on, is that I just want you to have this growth and emotional freedom to be, in essence, everyone a lot of piss. A lot of people want to be authentic and original, and they are authentic and original. I'm just going to read this to you right quick. When we are children and we have a problem with someone, we get angry. For whatever reason, that anger pushes the problem away. We get the result we want. It happens a second time. We react with anger. And now we know if we get angry, we push the problem away. I'm not saying not to get angry. We have some justified anger. You have to work with me to talk further about that. But then we practice and practice because we need to set boundaries with that, and not walls, not building walls, but setting loving boundaries by taking our own, how does this affect me? And then standing in our own power. In the same way, we become masters of jealousy because we are masters of our soul, masters of our destiny, and it's not up to them. Those expectations, those, agreements that we set with other people. In the same way, we become masters of jealousy, masters of sadness, and masters of self-rejection. All of our drama and suffering is by practice. We make an agreement with ourselves and we practice that agreement until it becomes a whole mastery. The way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act becomes so routine that we no longer need to put our attention on what we are doing. It's just by action and reaction that we behave a certain way. So that's our autonomic system that I talk about. To become masters of love, that's what we want, right? It's love. Everything that we do, whether we are conscious of it or not, is because love. To become masters of love, we have to practice love. The art of relationship is also a whole mastery. And the whole only way to reach mastery is with practice. To master a relationship is therefore about action. It is not about concepts or attaining knowledge. It is about action. Of course, to have action, we need to have some knowledge or at least a little awareness of the way humans operate. So it goes on to describe a story of where if we imagine, and y'all may be like me, and here's just a few tips from the therapy that I had when I started over 20 years ago, was that when we imagine that everyone on the planet has these wounds, because basically that's what happens, is that everybody has things that they're trying to, to accomplish because of wounds or not to accomplish because of wounds. And so everyone on the planet has these wounds. And so when we touch each other, it hits a wound. So this is why we build that invisible force field that I talk about oftentimes, is we don't want anyone to touch our wound, and then we're also afraid, when we're afraid of rejection and setting those boundaries. That's why I say do them lovingly, because boundaries may not feel good for people, but they're a necessity, just like your air and breath and everything else, or not. The thing is that we will kill ourselves trying to please people and not live our lives. So about not taking it personally is when we know that these people have our wounds, and then we are able to not walk on the eggshells, but to also be kind. Is maybe we don't need to be touching somebody else's wounds. Maybe we don't need somebody else to be touching our wounds. When we don't take things personally, because the two tips I'm going to share with the therapist is that one of them was that somebody forgot that we were going to have dinner one time. And so I didn't call, and I sat there being hungry. And one friend told me, "Stacy, are you hungry?" Because I was complaining. Because this was the way I had trained myself. I had mastered this rejection, self-rejection. And so thinking that I was going to be abandoned, that plans were going to be abandoned around me. So she asked me, my friend Stacy, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, then why don't you eat?" This is common sense, y'all. So I did eat, and I stewed in it, and I kept on playing that tape, ruminating. And then I went to therapy, and I talked to my therapist, and she listened to my story about me talking about in my evidence about how I had dinner plans with him, and he didn't even call or anything. And she said, "Well, did you call and ask him if everything was okay?" And I'm like, "No." She said, "Did you ask him if he forgot? He's a human." And I'm like, "No," because it really wasn't like him to forget, honestly. And that's why I was but I'd been waiting for that, right? Sometimes we set ourselves up to wait. And that's what she told me. She said, "Oh, you proved it to yourself, didn't you?" So yeah, and that's taking things personally. What was the other one that I was thinking? Now, when I see, this is why y'all see me reading stuff. This is why. But I want you to think about that. And taking things personally. See, that also puts us, when we take things personally, it puts us in a self-centered mode to where maybe something come up with somebody. And we're just so busy looking for our evidence that we're not thinking about that. And I'm not saying to be codependent and just take responsibility and keep accepting rejection. Because then in building self-worth, once we can get out of our self-loathing, we can start working on our self-worth and be like, oh, like my therapist told me, am I trying to create evidence of low self-worth? And then why do I feel this way? And is that true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? So asking yourself, when you're starting to gather evidence and starting to take things personally, is it personal? Because when I did talk to this person, they get so in their head, that they do forget these things. That's their type of personality. There are different types of personality. because some of that comes with this anxious attachment. Some of that symptomatic of anxious attachment to when we're afraid that someone's going to forget about us and abandon us, that we build that story. A few people I worked with this week, that was a theme, is anxious attachment. So learning more, instead of trying to figure out why they do and manipulate what they do, learning more about our anxious attachment styles so that we don't take it personally, because it is personal, because it is ours, our feelings. What they do is not personal, because that's what they do. And then we get to choose. We are not, one of my most popular videos is treating adults like children. We do not get to train adults how to treat us unless we're just changing our own behavior. And then that's where the boundaries come in, is, am I gonna, is this something that I want or that I don't want? Do I want a person who has these issues? Is that part of my growth right now? Because as your wounds are healing, you won't have the same attractions. Okay? Because you won't be looking for that evidence. And when you quit looking for that evidence, you're going to quit finding it. So I hope this has been helpful this morning, that you will keep it simple, and that you will think about what I said. Are you gathering evidence and not taking it personal? So first off, when you get offended, ask, am I taking it personal? And then asking, how is this affecting me? What is the fear beyond this? Am I afraid I'm not important enough? Have I been afraid of them leaving, and am I gathering evidence that I'm going to be abandoned? Am I just waiting on it? Life is too precious to spend waiting on gathering evidence of somebody leaving, because that doesn't have to be your personal reality or story today. You get to be the master of your story. So I hope this has been helpful. Keep it simple, y'all, and have an amazing Saturday. And don't take things personally. Just fix what you can personally fix within yourself. Thanks. Bye.